Hey guys, welcome to Realization Hub. My name is Michelle Corazao-Dinu, and I'm an intuitive counselor, energy healer, and channeler who loves to bridge the gap between the unseen world of spirit, consciousness, energy, and intuition so that I can apply to your everyday human experience. Today's video is an energy update for July 2022. I'll be going over the energy dynamics for mass consciousness, those of you in your awakening, and those of you in your embodied enlightenment. If you ever need personal attention around your own personal growth, the individual transformation that you're going through, your embodied enlightenment, some of your internal transformation, big changes that you're navigating in your life, or you just need clarity, relief, or empowerment in what you're going through right now, feel free to schedule a free consultation with me, a one-on-one session, or join one of my group sessions that are all there in support of you. For more information, just visit my website or send me an email. All right, so if you like these videos, please give them a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me a lot. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's get started for mass consciousness. So when I look at mass consciousness, I'm noticing more of a gentle, like a very gradual rise in consciousness in July, as well as like a gentle release or kind of gentle purging going on. So we might see people in mass consciousness just going through little gentle phases of releasing energy, cleansing out energy from their bodies, and kind of heightening their level of consciousness in very gradual and small shifts. Sometimes mass consciousness can have these big shifts that just happen all at once, and we can feel that wave happening across the planet in big waves. Sometimes mass consciousness can grow gradually, and we can hardly notice it's changing, but it is. And that's kind of the feeling that I get for July. Now, another thing that I was tapping into about mass consciousness is that mass consciousness has been, climbing a mountain when it comes to technology. So what do I mean by that? Usually when I see this image of like a mountain, I think of a very long-term journey that has a lot of challenges and a lot of limitations and trials and tribulations along the way. And when you start off on a mountain, you're going all uphill and it can be very challenging. And you're also in the forest usually. And it's hard to see, the final outcome. It's hard to see the summit. You actually can't see the summit. You can't get that perspective of the mountain itself. And during that phase of kind of hiking through the forest, you might not really know where you're going, why you're doing something. You face your limitations, you go through challenges, and then as soon as you break out of that tree line and you start, kind of crossing the saddle of a mountain, you start to get this perspective all around you. You can see everything around you. You start to get the views, and you start to see like, oh, I know where this trail was leading me to, and I'm starting to see the full picture here. Well, mass consciousness has been climbing a mountain around technology. This has started years and years and years ago, but it really started to pick up the pace when we saw the internet and computers and cellular phones and all of these things kind of being birthed and evolving over the years. And you can kind of think back to the time in the 1980s, the 1990s, where people were still having conversations about technology. People could say like, oh, I'm not a technology person, or, computers are for the workplace, but not for our home. Oh, not everyone's going to have, a computer. Not everyone's going to have a cell phone. People were still depending on just their landlines at home or, pay phones out in public. It was kind of optional whether you wanted to use technology or not. Some people really resisted it. They saw more and more problems with it. They didn't trust it. They didn't really know where it was going. And they didn't really see where it was going. And then other people really got into it, and they were using the latest technology, using this complex technology to make their life simple. And then as we see that progress, now almost everyone has a computer, almost everyone has a phone, a cellular phone, almost everyone has multiple devices, becoming a lot more popular for technology to be in everyday living, everyday society. You know, mass consciousness has been going on this long journey with technology. And in July, I'm starting to see mass consciousness kind of like on the saddle of the mountain. Mass consciousness is starting to get the bigger views about what technology is here for and how it can serve the planet and how it can bring balance to the planet, how it can make this planet a healthier place to live, a healthier place for everyone. And I was particularly picking that up about transportation. That in July, mass consciousness is starting to get some new perspectives about transportation on the planet. Now, why is this happening all of a sudden? Well, I don't really watch the news, so I can't tell you if something's going to pop up in the news or we're going to start seeing, you know, things emerging in technology about transportation. But what I can say energetically is that a lot of those that are in their mature stages of an embodied enlightenment are starting to experience multi-dimensional living. You know, they are living and experiencing multiple realities at once. There's infinite potentials that they are aware of. There's infinite realities that they can create and experience. And they have access to changing their reality, experiencing alternate realities. Their perception is very fluid in a way. And this is starting to show up in mass consciousness in really fun and interesting ways. There's books out there about multidimensional, realities. There's a lot of movies coming out recently. Doctor Strange, Everything Happening Everywhere All at Once. You know, these are movies that express that multidimensional nature. There's TV shows, there's sci-fi movies about this out in mass consciousness. And there's even a metaverse, you know, being created where there's, you know, virtual realities that you can experience. So, you know, multidimensional living is starting to be expressed in a mass consciousness level. And the reason why it's here is because it's already being embodied by those that are already in the mature stages of their embodied enlightenment. And so this is what's interesting, is that multidimensional living, to me, I was seeing it very connected to transportation in mass consciousness and how that's going to be changing over the years. You know, in the past, you know, people used to walk everywhere. And then, you know, then they would take carriages, and then they would take boats, and then airplanes and buses, and eventually people had individual cars, and you know, it just kept changing this transportation on Earth and how people would transport everywhere. It'd get faster, it would be more individualized, it'd be more customized, and then there was, you know, of course, mass transportation available as well. So this is continuing to evolve on the planet. And because this multidimensional, you know, essence is kind of in the air of mass consciousness, there's going to be some really sci-fi-like experiences with transportation emerging on the planet over the years. We might see things like flying cars, you know, new forms of transportation. Maybe you'll see like people able to teletransport. Maybe you'll see interplanetary travel. People will be able to access different realities on the Earth. Maybe they live in one country, but they work in another country. Or, you know, they live in one city, but they fly across the country every day to another reality, a job that they have across the country, you know. So this multidimensional experience that's being embodied on the planet through individuals in their embodied enlightenment, it's starting to be expressed in mass consciousness through technology, and in this case, transportation. So I'm curious to see what starts emerging maybe in the news, maybe just creatively in movies and films and things like that about transportation. Or maybe if we just start to see some seeds being planted in July around, advanced technology in our transportation. It also makes me consider, some of the things that have been happening recently. A lot of people have cut off gas from Russia, especially the U.S. So, the gas prices are rising here, and some people can't afford it, and a lot of people aren't enjoying that. And it's really pushing on society to create new options. And so I think this is one of the reasons also in mass consciousness, or just one of the ways you can see this happening in mass consciousness, where there's a lot of pressure happening in mass consciousness to change the way we transport on the earth, to bring it to more balance, to bring it to more efficiency, to bring it to more of a healthy way that everyone can use and enjoy and access. So this is what I'm noticing about mass consciousness. As far as like the energetic purging goes, I think it's a continuance of how people relate to technology. This mountain that mass consciousness has been climbing has been essentially a big purge around their ability to have technology, understand technology, integrate technology into their lives and integrate technology into society, and to make things simple for society, and even though technology can kind of be complex. So I do think people maybe for the first time are starting to realize how difficult it is to live a life without technology, how important it is to integrate more technology or keep up with technology, or to stop resisting technology, or to embrace technology. I really can feel it in the air that people are starting to see some of the fruits of technology and how it can make life easier, and more simple, and more efficient. At the same time, there's a lot of struggle with technology where it can be overwhelming and things are moving faster than ever for some people, or for everyone really. So, there's plenty of growth periods. There's plenty of cycles in which mass consciousness is expanding around technology and releasing the energy that was keeping mass consciousness from embracing technology. And now I see, mass consciousness is just coming to a point where they're starting to get that perspective on technology. They're really starting to see where it can go, and they're really starting to embrace it and say, you know what, the climate is screwed up. Let's use technology to fix the climate. You know what, our transportation is screwed. Let's use technology to fix our transportation. You know what, our food system's screwed up. Let's use technology to fix that. They're starting to see all these major problems on the planet, and they're starting to embrace technology and say, you know what, let's use technology to, to rebalance this issue, to rebalance this problem on the planet. And so for some reason, I was just seeing things about transportation in July and how mass consciousness is doing some slow purging around that, around the relationship to technology, multidimensional living, and transportation. So what does that look like on the surface? Well, we might see a continuance of people kind of getting sick, getting an illness or a disease, or getting COVID or a flu or a cold is a way for your body to purge out foreign energy, or energy that's keeping you stuck or limited in some way. And so a lot of times we get sick, or get a disease, and it's very real. You can test positive for COVID, you can get sick, you have all the symptoms, you have all, the disease could be very real, but spiritually, energetically, it can act as a growth period where you're spiritually using that as a way to facilitate a release. And so since I'm seeing more of a gentle purge, I'm going to go ahead and assume that we just might see a continuance of, people getting colds or flus or sick, throughout the summer. And just, a lot of people just going through a week or two where they're just kind of releasing energy around this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull a card, see if there's anything else to share. Okay, so the first card I pulled was a 9 of Cups. It was reversed. I'm going to let you look at that card while I talk about it. Okay, so Nine of Cups can be like a lot of gifts, enjoying your abundance, kind of like a wish granted card. And really what I get about this card, I see clairvoyantly this image of like a really long winding road. And so I think the reason why this is reversed is that, when it comes to this mountain of technology that mass consciousness is climbing, I think it's a long road, and I think it's going to continue to be a long road. This isn't just something that's all going to happen in 1 month or 1 year or 5 years. I mean, we're going to be seeing this happening over 50 years probably. But the stuff is really starting to hit the road, and build momentum right now. The speed of which technology is being expressed on the planet in new ways is really starting to happen now on the planet. And so I do think that, mass consciousness is going to be getting a lot of gifts along the way, getting the gift of all this technology along the way. But the overall, gratification of everything being balanced and efficient and working really well on the planet for everyone, I think is very much like a delayed gratification. It's going to take some time. But, good things are coming. Really good things are coming. I also see this dragon card called Potato Dragon, and it says support on it. And I was seeing this really cute image of like a kid getting a lollipop, like a yellow lollipop, after, visiting like the dentist or the doctor. It's not something you want to do, to go to the dentist or the doctor, so you kind of treat yourself afterwards as a gift for going through it. So I do really see that, this technology is really here to support the planet, but I also see where it can be really hard for some people to show up for it, really hard for mass consciousness to go through the not so fun self-love, to be able to allow this technology to emerge on the planet. So, self-love can sometimes be like buying yourself chocolate and taking a bubble bath and buying yourself new clothes and treating yourself. But a deep form of self-love can be like stepping out of your comfort zone, doing things that you are scared to do, but you do them anyways. Taking care of your health, going to the doctor, doing things that you might not like, but they're good for you, and they're ultimately nurturing you and a way to love yourself. So I kind of get that feeling with mass consciousness, especially with technology. Like, there's definitely some things mass consciousness doesn't want to show up for, but they are kind of acknowledging that they need to, because it's a deeper form of self-love, this rise in technology on the planet. And really, mass consciousness just needs emotional support to get through it. It's going to be okay, this is good for you, this is going to change things, it's going to help rebalance things, just a lot of reassurance, a lot of, encouragement, a lot of, treats and rewards as they move through this change happening on the planet with technology. The wisdom coming through for mass consciousness is here and now. So this is all about being in the present moment. It says number 32 on it, for those of you into numerology. And what I was kind of getting out of this card is that when some people start to hear about the potential changes happening on the planet, like, oh, we're going to have faster transportation, we might have universal income, or we might have robots that clean and cook for us. We might have all these awesome things that happen because of technology. A lot of people delay what they need to do for themselves right now and say, well, I'm just going to wait until the planet is better. and then I'll enjoy my life. And this is kind of saying like, hey, this could be a while. It might not, even for some of you that are, older, it might not even, you might not even see the full extent of this before you move on and you leave the planet. So, for those of us that are really young, you might start to see this when you're older, so there could be a lot of time, for all of this to really come to maturity as far as this technology on the planet. And so it is still important for you to be in the present moment and handle your life the way you need to right now, not depend on things happening in the future for your life to work out, but start making your life work out for you right now. Be in the moment with yourself and navigate your life from the present moment. Don't depend on the future for your life to be better right now or for you to get relief right now. This is something that you still need to be in the present moment and just be aware of some of the changes happening on the planet with technology. All right. That is the energy update for mass consciousness. I'm going to go ahead and move on to those of you in your awakening. Hello to those of you in your awakening. Welcome. Thanks for watching. So I continue to see this emergence of some kind of new role or new identity or new version of yourself emerging for those of you in your awakening. And I get the impression that this isn't something that you've had to plant the seed for and nourish and develop and grow until finally it's ready to emerge. I get the impression that this is kind of like an identity or a role that just kind of walked in from the side stage. It's just like it kind of took you, kind of blindsided you a little bit. It just kind of felt like just kind of came right in to your life, and you're just kind of like, whoa, like I'm kind of new. I'm kind of like a new person suddenly. I'm talking differently. I'm dressing differently. I'm expressing differently. I'm attracted to new things all of a sudden. Like, just kind of came right in. So. What I think is so cool about this generation that's going through awakening is that this generation is not necessarily, I'm not speaking for everyone, but I'm noticing a trend here where those going through their awakening in this generation, they are allowing themselves to be seen. They're expressing their awakening on the internet. They're talking about it with other people. There's information about it on social media. And all over the internet. There's access to books, videos, online courses, teachers, healers, all kinds of people that are, able to facilitate or guide or teach or counsel or help those going through their awakening now. And so a lot of people are a lot more open about it in their awakening, allowing themselves to be seen. And this is different from previous generations that went through their awakening. Previous generations that went through their awakening, a lot of times they were hiding. They didn't allow themselves to be seen. And it was actually a pretty painful process. And it did put them through a lot of suffering as they went through their awakening. I mean, awakening has a lot of trials and tribulations and cycles of the dark night of the soul, or the dark night of the human is what I like to call it. But, so awakening isn't just, a walk through the park for a lot of people. And those in the past not only were going through those trials and tribulations and those challenges, but they were also hiding and very isolated and alone. And it was hard to connect with other people that were going through it. And even in spiritual communities, outside of religion or, outside of the box of the typical community, even then it was hard to connect with those that were going through their awakening or embodied enlightenment. And so the reason why I see that happening and the reason why I see that changing is that, those that came into their awakening in earlier generations, those people came into their awakening before their time. not before their time, but before the time on the planet. They were kind of about 20 to 100 years before their time. And then we have examples of people coming into their awakening and embodied enlightenment way before that too. But the time of great awakening happening on the planet is now. It's been within the last 5 years. You can circle 2020 on your calendar and you can just kind of see 5 years before that and the 5 years after 2020, where a lot of people are coming into their awakening on the planet. So it's kind of like this great awakening on the planet. It is the time for awakening on the planet, and it's happening through technology, and it's happening through a lot of individuals coming into their awakening. And so, before that, the generations that came into their awakening before that, they came into their awakening before the time. They were ahead of their time. And so it wasn't necessarily in service to them to express it, to share it, to open up, to be seen about it, because they would be rejected, judged, misunderstood, all kinds of things, So I'm just kind of noticing the difference here, and you can really see those in their coming into their awakening kind of more so in this generation at this time of the planet. They're not afraid to express themselves. They do, don't get me wrong, they do go through cycles where they withdraw from society and they go within and they go through their own stuff, and that can be very difficult for them. But then when they come back out into society, embrace life through those cycles, they're very much being seen. They're on the stage, they're talking, they're on social media, they're sharing, they're expressing. And many times when they come out of those cycles of being withdrawn, they show up in this new expression, this new identity, or this new version of themselves. And what I think is so beautiful about that is it's like this colorful expression that you can see on the planet and how they're moving through their own evolution, their own individual evolution and society's evolution. You can see these trends happening in society where people more and more and more are embracing their own unique style of fashion, their gender fluidity, their sexual orientation. There's just a lot of freedom happening in self-expression. And so these people aren't hiding their self-expression. These people in their awakening, they're not necessarily hiding their self-expression. They're embracing it. And it's kind of reminds me of like, a teenager growing up and how they can go through phases where they go through like a gothic phase or like a jock phase or like a nerd phase, or, and they look back on their phases as a child and they are kind of embarrassed by it or ashamed by it because it wasn't like the true version of themselves that they as an adult have grown into. But this is totally different for those in their awakening. It's almost like these phases are these beautiful expressions of who they were at that time and how it served them to get to the next phase of their journey. And so they look back on these phases and they celebrate like, oh, that's when I, dressed like this. And that's when I only ate vegan food. And that's when I, was into this sport, and they just kind of really embrace it. They're not ashamed of it. They're just like, yeah, that was that time, and that's how it served me, and now I'm different, and I love how I am now. And I just think it's a beautiful spectrum, a beautiful rainbow of expression of that we can really see with our own eyes as individuals on the planet go through their evolution and express their evolution. And it's beautiful, and it's a good thing that those in their awakening can be seen as they go through it. And of course, there's going to be natural times where there's withdrawal, and you're not interested in being seen, and you want to be alone, and you want to focus on yourself, and you feel like you need to be alone, and times that are quite challenging still, so I do see this new role emerging, or this new identity, or this new version of yourself emerging right now for those in their awakening. And it's just basically pinpointing another cycle you might be going through, another evolutionary phase you might be going through. And these roles or identities are there to serve you through that. So some of the wisdom I have to share with you is just to embrace this new emergence of this new version of yourself. to love yourself, to accept any changes that you may be going through, to accept that the way you're relating to people, the way you're relating to your job, your career, your life purpose, your passions, all of that can be changing right now. You know, when you change, everything can change. So just be more in that self-acceptance around that, acknowledge that, embrace this new emergence, celebrate it, and kind of welcome that unknown and how your life might change because of this new identity or role or version of yourself. Embrace it as if, you know, it's something to look forward to. It's something to celebrate. It's you know, magic on the horizon for you. All right, so let's go ahead and pull a few cards and see if there's anything else for you to know about July 2022. All right, so I picked some cards for you guys. First card I got was the Four of Swords. It was reversed. And so what I got out of this was that, you know, you guys are still coming out of this phase of going within. So this new emergence of this new role is, you know, still emerging. It's coming in through the side in a way, but it's still emerging. It's kind of like waking up from a sleep, you know, it's just, the presence of it is gradual perhaps, and you're coming out of this kind of withdrawal stage very slowly. I am seeing in this card like this image of a diamond or like a yellow diamond, and I do think that this period of withdrawal that you've gone through was a phase in which you were crystallizing something within you. You know, when you think about how a diamond is created or a gem, you know, it's kind of like buried in the dark and, you know, a lot of pressure, a lot of darkness, and under pressure, you know, it forms this beautiful diamond. So I do think that perhaps you have gone through a period of withdrawal here where you were under a lot of pressure. Maybe you felt like you were in the dark, felt disconnected, felt separated from everything, you know, taking a break from society, withdrawing. This is kind of telling me that, you know, that process is kind of coming to an end. Whatever you were crystallizing, whatever you were kind of forming under those energetic conditions is now, you know, complete, and you're starting to come out of this while this new identity or version of you emerges. I'm also seeing this card, this, yeah, let's go the distance, number 47. And this is some wisdom coming through. Go the distance is about, you know, kind of the long journey versus the short-term journey. You know, a cheetah is really fast, and, you know, it can sprint, but it can't sprint forever. And so this card is bringing about wisdom of like, go the distance. Like, this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And so, you know, this new emergence of a new role, it's not like in you know, in one day or 1 week or maybe even 1 month, you're going to know who you are, what you want to do. You know, this identity is emerging over time, and you're integrating it into your life over time. So this is not something that's happening fast. It's something that's more of a journey, and you can pace yourself as you reorient yourself to this new version of you and reorient your life to this new version of you. I did pull some cards to see if I can get some insights about this new version of you coming through. And I got the box and I got the stone. The box is all about social conditioning, you know, the box of society, maybe even the box of your own family, or, you know, the limitations that are around us that keep us in a box. And so I do think this new version of you is kind of like this little light that shines through this box and brings a lot of awareness to your own limitations, social conditioning, things that hold you back, and possibly helps you break through this box. Another, you know, way of interpreting this card is that you will be going back into society in some way. As this new version of you emerges, you'll be entering back into society, in the box of society, in a new way. And this version of you is going to help you navigate society, and be in society, while not being limited by society. This stone card is more of like an anchor card. It's more about grounding. It's kind of a heavy energy, to it. And so this new version of you that's emerging could be more grounded. It could be more committed. It could be very strong and reliable. What I'm really seeing about this is kind of like a hippo that like hides in the water. Like maybe you only see like its like nose and its eyes sticking out of the water. But when it wants something, it shows up for it. It can run through that water. It can run out of the water and charge at something, and kind of like attack it and get it, like hungry hippo style, So I do kind of feel that strength in you, like this new version of you. Like it can really be just like hanging out, like kind of, on the outskirts of society. And then when you see something, that you want, you can really show up for it in a very strong way, in a very reliable way, in a very big way, and just show up and go for it. So that's kind of what I feel about this card coming through in this new version of you. So you might be feeling a need to be more reliable, more committed, more stable, more grounded, to be more in your strength, and to go for something, to kind of show up and go for it instead of kind of hanging out in the background. I wouldn't be surprised if, you kind of withdrew from society for a while and now you're going to be re-engaging with society in some way, more as this bright light kind of piercing through society, and that requires you to be strong, and it requires you to show up and go for it, and be very grounded and reliable and committed in some way. Or maybe there's just a version of you that's very committed and consistent with breaking through limitations, especially social limitations and family limitations, and limitations that have boxed you in. So you might be going through a new version of yourself that really embraces freedom. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. Take care. Hello to those of you going through your embodied enlightenment. For you, I saw this image of you drawing a line in the sand, and it really seemed like you were making a big boundary in your life. And I don't really think it had to do with making boundaries with yourself, or actually a big boundary with yourself, but it wasn't these like tiny little boundaries with other people and yourself. It reminded me of a big boundary you were making with yourself. Like, I am not going to experience this anymore. And it really reminded me of suffering, and how perhaps you may have been going through experiences up until now that were serving you, but were kind of putting you through some type of suffering. And I do sense that some of you in your embodied enlightenment are starting to draw a line in the sand and saying, you know what, I'm just no more. I'm just not going back to that experience. I'm done with it. I got everything out of it that I could, and I'm done with it, and I'm moving on, and I'm not going back to these experiences that created suffering in my life. So how is this happening? Why is this happening? I do see this coming from a lot of change happening in your heart, a lot of energetic change happening in your heart. A lot of energy is shifting and releasing around how you relate to yourself and how you relate to others and how you relate to everything. It just seems like there's been a dump of like really old identities. And I'm not talking about like old identities necessarily from this lifetime. I do see you releasing old identities, but I do notice you releasing old identities that played a really big that had a really big impact in other lifetimes. So you could have been like, a leader, a king, a queen, like some really big role, like a military star, or, someone famous, or, it just, you've probably had tons of experiences in other lifetimes where you were playing these bigger roles, having a bigger impact on the planet. Those I see kind of releasing, rebalancing, and integrating right now. And it's because you are coming into like your presence of who you really are now. And that identity in and of itself is very expansive, and it embodies all that you are, and it's very potent, and it has a very strong impact on you and your world around you. And so your relationship to having a big impact on yourself and others is changing, because in the past, in these older roles, it seems that some of those older roles had baggage. You can think about some of the historic figures that had really major influence on society or changes on the planet, or other things. They weren't perfect. Those people. They had wounds. They had negative experiences. Sometimes they had negative changes and failures. And so I do see some of these bigger roles that you've played in other lifetimes, although that they may have had a big impact on the planet in some way, or in society in some way. I do notice that they did come with a lot of baggage. So I don't necessarily see you releasing the roles. I see you releasing the baggage that came with them, and kind of integrating the wisdom around playing those bigger roles, or having a bigger impact or influence on the planet or others, or just your own life. So I do see this as an experience of you coming more into your presence of who you are and all that you are, and how impactful it is and how big it is. You're really letting go of those roles that are also very small, where you were small, and really embracing how big you are, as a soul, as a being, as encompassing all that you are. It's very big. So. I do see you kind of going through some detoxing in your heart around releasing the baggage around that, and starting to embrace this new presence that you have, and maybe even reorienting your life a little bit to how you want to change your life, impact your life, or impact others. I think the biggest change that's happening right now is just like that image that I saw of you drawing a line in the sand. As you come into this presence of having a bigger impact on yourself and your life, I do see just that boundary that you're making of like, I just know more. I'm just not going to go back to experiences like this. I'm not going to create more baggage in my life. I'm not going to suffer anymore in this way. And so, you're moving into this presence and into this grandness and into this big impact in a new way of saying, I'm just not going to suffer anymore. I'm going to orient my life in such a way to where it's enjoyable, to which I can really be of influence and a big impact to myself or others, in a way that serves me and brings me joy. I do see this as a good time to reflect on your life and notice where you're still suffering, what is causing that suffering, and where you could possibly change the way you live so that you don't have to tolerate that suffering anymore, so that you can really let it go. And be patient with yourself. This is kind of like a new version of you. It's emerging, and it can take time to reorient and understand what's changing, and really start to acknowledge the impact you are already having on your world. Essentially, I would say that this is you living from your divinity and what that's really like. And this seems to be like the beginning of it, in a new way. You've always been living from your divinity, but I feel like you're taking it to a new level, a much more potent level of living from your divinity. And so it does seem like a beautiful time to reflect on this, and be aware of this experience as it's happening, and move through your life with more intention and just acknowledgement of the impact that you do have on yourself and others, and maybe the type of impact you want to have. Some general wisdom that I have is just to not be afraid of this impact, to recognize that this new emergence of you being in your presence and living from your divinity doesn't carry all the baggage that you carried in other lifetimes or other experiences from this lifetime. And it's a good time to start trusting yourself and really deepen that trust within yourself. And just, ask yourself those questions of like, what kind of impact do I want to have? Do I want to share myself, express myself, create something, invent something, completely change the direction in my life, or, deepen something that I've already started, take things I've already started to the next level. This is how you can start to, understand the impact that you have and what you want to do with it. All right, let's go ahead and pull some cards and see if there's anything else to share about those of you in your embodied enlightenment. All right, I pulled some cards for you. First couple of cards I got was the Page of Wands as well as the Moon reversed. So I feel like for a while you've been really going through a lot of energetic stuff that has been happening very deep underneath the surface. It hasn't been obvious to you, and it hasn't been maybe obvious to other people in your life either. And some of this stuff is very subconscious, very much unseen, in the shadows, working through a lot of shadow stuff perhaps. And this is just telling me that you're emerging from this. You're starting to come out of the depths and up to the surface again. The fact that it's reversed. This phase of going really deep is kind of coming to a completion, and you're coming out again, starting to come out again. And this is leading you to more spontaneousness. This is a very creative energy in this card. It's very fertile and youthful. And it's kind of an energy that says, right now is a good time to be a little bit more spontaneous with your creative ideas, your creative projects, to just play with them, not necessarily try to make them into something, but just to play with ideas, be spontaneous, be creative, play. This, right now being playful looks like it could be very helpful with you kind of opening up to more ideas and your creative flow. So being playful is very important and helps you get out of these deep and dark depths that you've been in. I also pulled this card, Jump In, and it says, Andromedan energy, adventure, and say yes to change. Hope I said that right. So yeah, I was definitely feeling this energy of diving into something, And maybe even this card being reversed, this Moon card, could symbolize not necessarily going deep within yourself, but going deep into an experience, going deep into something. Going deep into a project, maybe a creative project. And with this card, it's definitely about jumping in, like going all in. Not having one foot in the door, one foot out of the door, but just, really going all in on an idea or all in on an experience that you want to have. Diving into it. Pulled a couple other cards. We've got this Surrender card and this Speak Truth card. I do think a lot of you have been holding back. A lot of you have been in this, deep place. And you've been holding back from sharing yourself. And maybe you're shy about it, scared about it, hesitant about it, doubtful about that. But in a way, to live from your divinity, you have to surrender to your divinity. And for the human self, it might not be so comfortable. You might still go through experiences where you're stepping out of your comfort zone. There's something about your divinity that wants you to express your truth. You can share it by writing a book, creating something, sharing it with others, speaking, There's so many different ways to express yourself, verbally and non-verbally. And so this is kind of saying that, you know, you've got a beautiful truth to share. And, you know, it's time to be louder about it. And, you know, if that makes you uncomfortable, just see it as a surrender and an allowing for your divinity to live through you. Another couple cards I pulled was Fork in the Road and Happy Happy. And sorry about the light, but you know, when I felt this Fork in the Road card, this was reminding me of that line that you've drawn in the sand, like you're just not going back to certain experiences because it was creating suffering on some level. And so I feel like there could be some paths in your life that were kind of taking you somewhere. And now you're getting to the point where you have to maybe choose a certain path or choose a certain direction in your life because you just can't go that other direction anymore. So you might be experiencing this in your relationships, in your jobs, your careers, your life purpose, you know, other things in your life, your health. But it is kind of showing that, you know, you got to choose a direction to go in. Are you going to choose that direction of suffering? Or are you going to choose that direction of the unknown where you're embracing, you know, living life from your divinity, where, you know, there's less suffering or no suffering. You know, and this came out too with it, Happy Happy. And so this is kind of saying, you know, choose what makes you happy. You know, be playful about it. Now, this isn't like a serious thing, living from your divinity. It's a very playful, youthful energy. You know, and it's really about you enjoying your life on Earth. And so, you know, what is something that brings you joy? What is something that makes you happy? Go for it. Dive into it. Live it. And if you have any confusion about what direction to take, you should definitely choose the direction that makes you feel more playful, more lighter, the direction that has more levity to it. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. Take care.